Our elders share our past, but also our future. They are the living treasures of our tribe. From Chickasaw artist Mike Larsen come 24 awe-inspiring paintings of our Chickasaw elders, each accompanied by a biography recorded from personal interviews during the initial portrait sketches. We should all be listening to our elders. Experience their stories firsthand and listening to our elders, Elders of the Chickasaw Nation, Volume 3, available now at chickasawpress.com.
Team. Another quality video from our production team. Welcome in to the latest edition of Chickasaw Press Livestream. I'm your host, Larry Morgan, and today I'll be joined by guests Mike and Martha Larsen, the creators behind Proud to be Chickasaw, We Know Who They Are, and the latest release, Listening to Our Elders. We'll also be joined during the book signing by author Michelle Cooke, one of the biographers for this book. Listening to Our Elders is a third publication in the Larsens Elders of the Chickasaw Nation series. This series is a collection of art books that give tribute to various Chickasaw elders with inspirational paintings and biographies. We're thrilled to discuss this new release with incredible Chickasaw artist Mike Larsen and his wife, Martha Larsen. We look forward to seeing your questions as you follow along with us on Facebook and YouTube. We know you can't wait, so let's begin with our first questions. First off, we want to say good afternoon to both of you for being here today. We really appreciate it and want to thank you for being here with us.
Our pleasure.
Glad to be here.
Listening to Our Elders is the third book in this series, and which began with They Know Who They Are, which was published in 2008, and was followed by Proud to Be, published in 2010. These books offer us a glimpse at our most important resource, our elders. Can you give us a little bit of the history behind how this series came together?
Oh, well, in 2004, Mike came up with this idea and approached Governor Anatevy and wanted to honor the elders, but the living elders, the ones that we could see and listen to their stories. And Governor Anatevy thought it was a great idea and approved it. And then Arts and Humanities set us up with facilitators to go and interview with the elders. And it was wonderful. It was a really great time.
When I talked with Governor the first time, and we talked about this idea, the word that captured him quickly was living, because we could have gone to him about paintings of all the Chickasaw wonderful people that have gone through all these years in developing the nation, and I don't think he would have been interested. But when we talked about painting the living elders during the interviews of living people right now, he was struck by that. And that was how it happened, I think.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for that. Mike and Martha, since this project began, has your approach to these works in this series, whether developing the portraits or organizing everything to the final book, has it changed over time?
I don't think it has really changed. Hopefully my work's gotten a little better over all these years. If it didn't get a little better, that would worry me. But we discovered early on that doing these portraits of these wonderful people placed a requirement on me that I quite frankly enjoy, and that is each of these portraits had to be exact. That if someone were to look at one of these portraits of their mother or father and say, that doesn't really look like him, then I would be in trouble. So from the very start, that was a requirement that, like I said, I have enjoyed, and it has maintained. Maybe gotten a little better, but that requirement has been from the very first painting and remains the same. And it has also helped me in doing other works which are not involved with Chickasaw people.
Thank you so much. I want to let everybody know, let you guys know, we have Tishomingo, their third grade fine arts classes, is tuning in today to watch this.
Hi,
So we appreciate
guys.
them.
Good to see you.
Really appreciate that. And if anybody's interested in purchasing this book, we want to let you know you can find us at chickasawpress.com or in store at 1020 North Mississippi Avenue in Ada, Oklahoma, at that Chickasaw Press bookstore.
This is really good to hear about those kids, because our studio, my studio, is in Perkins, Oklahoma, which is 10 miles south of Stillwater. In the Perkins High School, their art teacher there brings their kids out to the studio, and we had long talks with them before they did that, and it's a good thing, good for these young people. And getting people into the studio that are in school, junior high and high school in particular, is wonderful, because it presents to these young people the notion that there is an opportunity in art. So having them come and visit a live studio, working studio, might have produced some good things. Yes, I will.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And it kind of leads me into another question we have. Obviously, helping these kids, it's fantastic for the community, and it lets you come impart your knowledge and skills to a new generation, our next generation of artists. But throughout your lifetime, how has Chickasaw art or Southeastern art evolved? How have you seen it kind of grow?
Well, I've seen artists that we have known in my lifetime. I have seen these people develop and grow as artists, whether it's because they study with good people or whether they do it on their own. I have never really inquired, but I have seen, and so have you, some really, really good development in some of our Chickasaw artists.
That's excellent. And Mike, as a Chickasaw artist, you've obviously produced countless other works, famous sculptures, paintings all throughout Chickasaw country. How do these portraits within the Elder series differ from the rest of your work?
Well, in a lot of the paintings that I do, I don't have to be worried about a perfect likeness, that I can use an attitude, or I can use a lot of light and shadow work in producing some of the works that I do otherwise. And so that is one thing that I don't have to worry about so much.
That's awesome. We also have another question here. One of our viewers, Tori, she wants to know, what is the creative process behind painting the portraits, and do you prefer like any certain types of lighting or scenery or settings when doing these?
Well, in doing these portraits of the elders, we try as best we can to put them in their own environment, in their own home, around their own home, or in a situation like Lillian Underwood. Mm-hmm. There was this place out, I could never find it in my lifetime again, where the Underwoods hold their yearly get-togethers. Very, very important to these people, and it was very important to her. And it was an outdoor setting. There was not really terribly good light, but we made it work because of the importance of where she was. And, you know, she was dressed in a bright, wonderful Chickasaw dress, and that she was well put together, well done, and she was an important person and displayed it too. So that came through, even though, like I said, things like the white light weren't perfect, it still worked.
That's amazing. Those are really interesting stories. We appreciate that. I know with this new edition, this latest book to the series, that gives us a completed 72 total portraits, which is amazing. Obviously, that's a massive undertaking. Do you have any other large-scale projects like this you've completed in the past, or anything that's upcoming?
We have some upcoming things, but I can't talk about them. We had to sign a non-disclosure form in our little contract. So the information on that won't be coming out for about 6 months.
Excellent. We'll be waiting for that excitedly for sure.
And it is not Chickasaw involved.
That's all right. It's a Mike Larsen project, and that's all we care about. We appreciate everything you do. We have a question from Connor Cole from Tishomingo. They want to know how long it took to write, publish this book, and give all your creative processing, especially with this book, I assume, to actually finish the paintings.
Well, most of the time in doing a painting comes up with developing the idea, getting the canvases ready. We make our own canvases, getting everything ready so that when you approach the canvas, you don't have to worry about anything else. There's just you and that canvas right in front of you. And it sounds simplistic, but it isn't. Once I get on a canvas, I'm pretty quick.
Yeah, maybe a week or so.
Yeah. Week or 10 days on each painting, each portrait. They're all the same size, 30 by 40, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And once I get started on a painting, bear in mind I work 7 days a week, which sounds tedious, but it isn't. But once I get started on a painting, I paint in acrylics, which are very fast drying, which I like because it gives me the opportunity to do glazes, over glazes, over glazes on one painting in one day. And oils are wonderful. I love the way they smell. But painting in acrylics gives me that opportunity to work quickly, which I've always enjoyed doing. When I went to school in New York, at the Art Students League, there was a requirement that I paint in oil paints, which is what real artists paint in. So I have an allergy to oil products. So I spent the whole time in New York with a swollen face. Couldn't wait until I got home and start back painting in acrylics.
That's great. We got another question from another person on Facebook. I'm not going to ask you what your favorite portrait is. We're not going to put anybody on the spot. But I believe we were talking about this earlier, and your first interview was very interesting. Can you kind of talk about that?
Our first interview was with Pearl Carter Scott.
Yes.
And have to keep in mind, Pearl Scott had been interviewed probably 1,000 times in her life. And so we all go into her house, Martha and I, and I think there were 3 facilitators.
Yeah, there were 3. It was the first one, so we packed them in.
Yeah. So here's Pearl Scott sitting in her recliner, and we tentatively started asking questions because I was probably the most nervous one there. And she just started talking. And her interview, I think, lasted for 2 hours.
It did. It was the longest one, and we wore her out, and then we realized we have to cut him back. But her story was, Will Rogers and Wiley Post.
Yeah.
Wiley Post taught her to fly.
And after a couple of hours, she kind of leaned back in her chair. And one of them said to her, I thought it was probably you, said, Mike, we need to go. And she was probably asleep before we got in the car.
Well, that's such an awesome story. And we actually, within the Chickasaw Press, for anybody that's following along, if you're interested, we have a book about Pearl. It's Never Give Up, and that is available here at the press. Obviously, one of our famous Chickasaw elders.
Uh-huh.
And one of the most unique aspects of this series is that you both get to work together with your significant other, which is a really interesting dynamic. Working has a couple, obviously, can be a challenge. What's that experience like for you two?
The best thing about our working together is that we have separate studios.
That's great.
You have to. You have to.
Yeah. Martha is an artist also, and her studio is at our house. And we built my studio how many years ago?
Oh, it was in 08.
08. And my studio is on our same property, but it is about 100 yards or 150 yards away from the house. And so I'm able to get up and go to work. And Martha is also, but we're in separate buildings. And so I don't step on her toes and she doesn't step on mine.
Gotcha. That's wonderful. And obviously both of you are very creative. You're both artists. How has that kind of impacted everything else you do throughout your life, being able to spend time with another creative like yourself?
What do we talk about? All
Art.
the time. We talk about art. We talk about photography. We talk about how beautiful things are,
Yeah.
and it never gets old.
Never gets old.
And now we talk about writing.
Yeah.
You know, which is great.
And we talk about other artists, but we won't go into that.
We appreciate that. We had another question here from a follower on Facebook. They wanted to know how working with the elders throughout all of this series, all 3 books, how has that impacted you two on a personal level?
Well, we learned, both of us, I think, learned so much from these peoples. And you have to understand that I came into my knowledge of my Chickasaw history late. I was a teenager. And I knew that my father was Chickasaw, but circumstances being the way they were, I never saw him. And so I was raised by my mother and my stepfather and my grandparents and all that. But I didn't know anything about my Chickasaw heritage until like I was 16, 17 years old. And it was about that time that I started getting into art when I was in high school. We had a high school art teacher who everybody loved because he was a drunkard. And he would come into the art class and take roll and leave. And he'd come back in an hour. Everybody still here? Yep, okay. And that was fine. But what I discovered during that art class was an enormity of art supplies that I had never had access to. And so I had all these things, all this stuff that I never had before. And so I started painting and drawing and like that. And so it just developed from my mid-teenage years.
Well, and also I want to add that during the first 24 Elders series, I lost both of my parents during that time period, and Mike's mother became quite frail also. And you know how you talk with someone, well, how have you been? Well, you know, just came back from my dad's funeral or whatever. Those elders became our parents.
Yeah.
They folded us into their stories, into their families, and were such a comfort to us.
They were, and you know, all these elders were the age of my mother, Martha's parents,
Yeah.
and you know, some of them, I swear, they hugged on us and prayed over us. And Charlie Carter,
Oh
bless his
my
old heart, I
gosh.
swear the man was a beauty. And listening to his history, everybody knows it, but he made us just so comfortable. And toward the end of our interview, gathers us all in a circle and prays over us in Chickasaw. And I wish I had known what he said. But it doesn't matter.
It was there.
It was
You
there.
know, it
And
was.
he was there. And we were lucky because I have a bow made by Charlie. And it's in my studio, hanging on the wall. Very special. I see it every day, which means I think of him every day. And that interview that we had with him. And it was very special. You know, they were all tremendously and special. But like Martha said, we walked in their homes. They folded us in, fed us, made us comfortable. And that was what they did before we started interviews.
And you remember Juanita Tate, and I don't remember, was she in the first 24? I think she was. She knew Mike's father.
Yeah.
Nobody knew Mike's dad. We had asked.
This was interesting because each of these elders, I knew that most of them had gone to one of the schools. And my dad, who I did not know, went to the Schlager school. And so I would ask them all, did you happen to know this man? And she was the only one.
She was.
And she knew him. She went into the Schlager school the same year that he was leaving. And the most interesting thing is, this is so cool because this was this year. Martha, on the computer, found a photo of baseball players from the Schlager school. There's my dad.
Wow, that's a special find.
Amazing. Amazing.
An amazing find. And we still have it. It's the only picture I have of him. I mean, he was an ugly old fart, but you know, it doesn't matter. I have this picture of him.
Well, that's great.
And
it's important to you, and that's the big thing.
Yeah, and
part of
she led us to a lot of just information about him, and then for some reason you remembered he played baseball or something.
Well, every once in a while, my mother would talk about it, and my granddad, that he was really quite a baseball player, and that he learned baseball when he was in school. Well, where was he in school? He was at the local school, and they had a baseball team. And
I know how we found it. I was watching the Ken Burns
the Ken
baseball
Burns
thing,
baseball.
and they showed this picture from Chilocco, and I went and looked it up online and found it. Amazing, just amazing. Kind of cool.
These are the wonderful stories we get when you do a book like this.
Yeah.
It's awesome. We're going to keep on, giving a few questions and seeing what people are sending through Facebook and YouTube. We're going to head into our extra time. We're going to do some live signing, and we're going to see what our questions they've sent in for us today, so we can just start signing some of these books. So we'll get you guys some pens. We're also going to welcome in for a moment here
Oh, that's a great
Miss
idea.
Michelle Cooke. She's one of the biographers of this book,
Swap 'em.
and
Are you sending
an author of several books here at the Chickasaw Press, including Protecting Our
Oh, no,
People
that's okay.
and Chickasaw Basic Language Workbooks 1 and 2.
You signed off, I'll sign it.
Thank you for being here, Michelle. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we're going to get all these signed. And we actually have a question for Michelle. Trey wants to know, how much did you like working on this book? Because they assume it was extremely interesting.
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Trey, for the question. No, it was such an honor to be able to work with the Larsens on this and to listen to the interviews that Martha recorded. And I learned so much about the elders. And again, it was just a privilege to be part of the project. And I'm just happy to be there.
Thank you so much, Michelle. We really appreciate that. See if we have any extra questions coming through. Here we go. Mike, I have a question here from Teresa. You've had a legendary career as an artist, and you've created works, large, small, all over the place. Out of everything, do you have any particular a piece or a project that was especially meaningful for you?
We have two. The first one would be the ballerina mural,
Yes.
and that was in 1991. This mural is at the state capitol, ballerinas, and the 5 ballerinas.
All Oklahoman, all Native
All
American,
Native American, all famous at the same period in history.
all prima donnas.
All prima donnas.
And they were, the first time they were ever on stage together was during the dedication of the mural. They all knew each other,
all
but
knew
they
each
had
other.
never performed
Never-
together.
Never been together, all of them at one time, in all these years. And we were so fortunate because one of the ballerinas was Yvonne Choteau, who became one of our best friends for many years.
For many years.
Oh, bless her heart. Anyway, she would come to the studio. My studio used to be on the Paseo in Oklahoma City, and she would come down, bring a big bag of Fritos, and talk about art and talk about dance, and just sitting and listening to her was incredible. But that particular painting of the ballerinas, 22 feet long on the base, 12 feet high, or 11 feet high. 11 feet high in the center. It's a half circle up there. Projected us, I think, into a new, what would you call it?
Well, just a higher level of notoriety.
Yeah. And it was a good thing because very, very large painting. Took us 6 months to do, paint, and it informed me, if a person will allow himself to listen to himself, it informed me that I really like doing big works. And so we developed something of a reputation for doing large works. And it has aided us over all these years. Because, many artists, not that they refuse or anything, that don't like to do big works.
Absolutely. It can be intimidating for sure in some sense. But that is, I've seen that piece firsthand, and it's definitely a state treasure. So, and your second piece.
The second one would be The Arrival at the Cultural Center.
Yeah, the sculpture called The Arrival, it's over at the Culture Center.
Yes, if everybody's following along, that's in Sulphur, Oklahoma, at Chickasaw Cultural Center.
Yeah, and it was interesting, again, really worked closely with Governor Anatoly. He had a lot of input on that piece. One of the most important things, input that he had was the placement of the sculpture where it is.
All right, we're back. We apologize for those technical difficulties, guys. Just part of doing this stuff live. We did have a question for Michelle. They wanted to know, Michelle, what's it like working alongside the Larsens on this book, and what did you kind of learn and complete in this project?
Oh gosh, like I said, it was just an honor to work with them. They're amazing people, and the stories, I think, affected me so much. These biographies, listening to what, because I got to listen to the people's voices, the recordings, so I was able to actually hear them talk, and then transcribe the audio, and just getting that little glimpse into their lives meant so much to me, and getting to know the elders on that level was life-changing.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you so much, Michelle. I guess for Martha and Mike, we have another question for you. We're going to swing over to them. I want to get your reaction. I know this is your third time doing a book in this series, but the first time you saw all of the portraits and you completed and all the elders kind of together in one place for the first gallery, the first showing, just kind of what that felt like and that impact.
Well, it was a wonderful time, and that first showing was at the History Center in Oklahoma City, in one of the big rooms, and they had bussed several people up to see the showing, the opening, and there were a lot of the elders there, but there was a lot of family there, and it was wonderful to listen to the family, to talk to them, because they were, they had heard all this history before, but they were very pleased. And this was almost the title of one of our books, that we had a man come up to me, one of the family members, and this elder had died, I think. Had she died?
I can't remember exactly who he belonged to.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Anyway, Martha and I were standing by ourselves, kind of intimidated by the whole thing, and he comes over and takes my hand and says, "Come, brother, let's go have our picture taken with Mother." And Mother was one of the portraits. She was not there for that photograph, so I'm thinking that she was gone. But that nearly became a title of one of the books, "Come, brother."
That's excellent. It kind of shows the meaning that these portraits have to the people that have family members involved.
It
or, you know.
is so, I'm sorry I cut you off.
No,
I
go,
apologize,
please.
but that was the thing, the family, the family, the family, the family. It was all about the family, and they made us part of that family, and I don't have a drop of Chickasaw blood in me. I mean, I'm European, and I'm part of the family, but there's nothing exclusive about the Chickasaw Nation. I'm so proud to be part of it, just the little bit that I am, you know?
Absolutely. Well, and everybody who's involved with Chickasaw Nation understands that family is one of our key elements
Right.
to everything we do, and they make it a priority everywhere,
Right.
everywhere throughout the nation. I know it's a big aspect of a lot of
Yeah.
our programs and policies. We're all very fortunate for that too. So I'm glad it was incorporated in this book.
She just touched on something. Martha is not Chickasaw. And one of the elders that we painted, I forget which series.
It was Erie Crew, no, what?
Emily Dickerson.
Emily Dickerson.
Emily Dickerson. And we went to interview her at her home, and wonderful woman, does not speak English, did not speak English. And her son was there to interpret with her.
Carlton?
Carlton. So we are finished our interview with Emily in her house, and we got to see her garden, and I think her garden was part of the title. Wild Onions was the title of her portrait. Anyway, we're out on the front porch, and Emily did not speak English, and so Martha and I are laughing about something, and Emily Dickerson said something to Carlton, and Martha asked him, "What'd she say?" And Carlton says, "Well, she gave you your Indian name, which is Pretty White Man." Pretty White Man.
Pretty white man. And it is just one little example.
Yeah.
Of
That's
love.
awesome.
I know.
Those are
Isn't it
just
cool?
the beautiful stories when we're working with the elders, for sure. Well, that's awesome. Let's see if we have any other questions coming through here. Obviously, here's a great one we have right here. Obviously, doing this series, it allows you to hear these fascinating stories that the elders have, and kind of sit down and have real conversations with them. I feel it's one of those things we take for granted. Before we know it, the opportunity to have those conversations is gone. How important is it to both of you that we utilize this wisdom and experience of our elders?
Oh, it means everything. I mean, that's what, this is what the project has evolved into, and that is that this nation would not be what it is without these people that went before, and they were contemporary to a lot of hard times that a lot of Indian peoples went through. But because, this is the unconquerable Chickasaw Nation, they surpassed everything that the federal government tried to do to them to eradicate them. I mean, you know, we heard about the relocation programs, we heard about this, we heard about that, and by golly, they survived. And that's what it all boiled down to, and that's what it all became about.
Yeah, we have a good friend who is full blood, one of the Plains tribes, and good friend. He's modeled for me thousands of
Numerous
times.
times, yeah.
And he modeled for the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, several times ago when I saw him, we were talking along, and said, "Man, I wish I was Chickasaw," because he is one of their elders. He is on all the councils and all this kind of stuff, and he really, really honors what Governor Anatoly is doing with and for this tribe. That's why he said that. I wish I was Chickasaw, because his tribe, I won't tell who it is, does not manage their money well. And I think we've all seen that, evidence of that. Anyway, one thing I wanted to mention, Martha and I are both heavy students of history.
Mm-hmm.
And the wars, World War II, Vietnam War, Korea, all of them are so important. But we interviewed this one woman, Geraldine Brown, and we heard a story that sent chills up our back, that she helped develop the film taken from the Enola Gay.
Oh, wow. That's huge. For
You
anybody who's
have no
following-
words.
Yes, if
There
they're
are no
following
words.
along, maybe we have some younger viewers that they're not familiar with what that is.
It
Can we
was,
kind of elaborate what
the
that is?
Enola Gay dropped the first atomic bomb
Yeah.
over the nation of Japan, helped end World War II.
Yeah.
And it was, and it was, they had to record it. It had to be recorded for posterity. And she had been trained for years after she joined the WAC, the Women's Auxiliary Corps. And they got that film back to the Pentagon, and had the Pentagon been built yet, or was
I
it?
don't know.
I don't remember. Back to DC, where she was, and she developed this. She was under armed guard for 24 hours while she was doing it.
They had military with her 24 hours a day while she was developing.
And
the
it
film.
took about 24 hours.
Yeah.
And it was just like,
Just,
it just, you know,
No big deal.
it's what she did. It was her contribution.
Great.
And
another thing, this is kind of unrelated to what we're talking about, but let's see. A dentist I went through up in Stillwater, I went into their little room, one of their little rooms where he was going to examine my teeth, and on the wall were all these wonderful photographs, and one of the photographs was taken from the Enola Gay of the plume as it rose, and she would have developed that film.
Wow. These are some of the gems that, you know, you're going to find reading these
all
books
of
in this
these
series.
people contributed in their own way to these incredible stories, and they just came back and lived their lives. It's remarkable. Remarkable. Yes, remarkable people.
That's so amazing. And I just want to reiterate, I know we had some difficulties earlier here, that your pieces that you mentioned earlier, that you had some special meaning with it, especially of all your works, were the prima belladonna piece
The ballerinas at the state
Yes.
capitol and the
and the arrival
and
statue.
the arrival at
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Cultural
those are
Center.
both available if anybody would like to see those. They're brilliant works that, you know, are lovely, and I'm sure you're extremely proud of them, as we are for our fellow Chickasaws. And we appreciate you guys answering these questions today. I think we're going to take this around and kind of try to wrap this up, and they're going to keep on signing books. If anybody has any other questions, please keep it going. We're here. All right. We appreciate everybody following along with us today on Facebook and YouTube and staying with us. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here. Our live stream is getting ready to come to a close. We really appreciate everyone who followed along today. Remember, if you're interested in purchasing a copy of Listening to Our Elders or any other titles at Chickasaw Press, you can visit us at chickasawpress.com or in person at 1020 North Mississippi Avenue, in Ada, Oklahoma, at our Chickasaw Press bookstore, and grab your copy today. Please join us tomorrow on the next edition of Chickasaw Press Livestream as we speak with Wiley Barnes and Josh Henson as they discuss their latest children's book, Funny Funny. Until next time, Chapisa La Cho.